A natural disaster is a major adverse event resulting from natural processes of the earth. It can cause lost life or property damage and typically leaves some economic damage in its wake, the severity of which depends on the affected population, resilience, or ability to recover. The natural disasters that commonly hit the Philippines are earthquake, tsunami, volcanic eruption, typhoon, fire, and landslide. Earthquake. The Philippines Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, or the FIVOLS of DOS, defines an earthquake as a weak violent shaking of the ground produced by the sudden movement of the rock materials below the Earth's surface. Earthquakes originate from the tectonic plate boundary, the focus points inside the Earth, where an earthquake start is referred to as the hypocenter, while the epicenter is the location of the surface of the Earth directly above the focus. That's according to FIVOLS 2018. Types of earthquake. Tectonic earthquake, produced by the sudden movement along faults and plate boundaries. Volcanic earthquake, earthquakes induced by rising lava or magma beneath active volcanoes. How to protect yourself during an earthquake. Let's watch this.
An earthquake is one or multiple series of vibrations on the ground that can cause serious damage to persons and property. During an earthquake, do not run away. Falling objects represent a danger. If you're inside, take shelter under a sturdy piece of furniture or in the corner of a wall. Stay away from windows and mirrors. Do not face them. Cover your head and neck. If you're outside, stay away from buildings and everything that could collapse. If you're driving, pull up your car at a safe distance from everything that could fall down. Stay inside your car until the earthquake is over. After the earthquake, be careful, there might be aftershocks. Listen to the radio for safety instructions. Close the water and gas inlet taps. Open windows and doors in the event of a gas leak. Leave the building. Don't use an elevator. Make your way to an open space. Eventually, head for a meeting point. Take your personal documents, warm clothes, and essential medication with you. Walk in the middle of the road and pay attention to falling objects. Don't smoke and don't light candles because of an explosion risk. Don't touch falling power lines. Don't make phone calls in order not to congest the telephone network. School children are taken care of at school. It is dangerous and not necessary to pick them up. Block access to damaged buildings. Stay away from coastal areas as there may be a risk of a tsunami. Make sure that your neighbors, especially if they're old or handicapped, do not need help. How to address the risk. Familiarize yourself with possible natural catastrophes in your country and safeguard measures. Arrange a meeting point for your family. Prioritize earthquake-resistant house constructions. Select your shelter areas. Store dangerous items properly in order to prevent them from falling. Secure devices and heavy pieces of furniture. Prepare your emergency disaster kit and first aid kit.
Natural disaster hit in the Philippines is tsunami. A tsunami is defined as the series of the sea waves commonly generated by the under-the-sea earthquakes and whose heights could be greater than 5 meters. That's according to ctws 2018. It can be mistaken cold tidal waves, sometimes mistaken for storm surge. ctws adds the tsunami might happen when the earthquake is shallow-seated and strong enough to displace parts of the seabed and disturb the mass of water over it. Some natural signs of approaching local tsunami: strong felt earthquake, unusual sea level or sudden drop or rise, unusual sound of approaching wave. What to do before, during, and after tsunami? Let's watch this.
Start with some basic awareness of your surroundings. Knowing the height of the street above sea level and its distance from the coast can help in planning an evacuation plan with safer routes. Plan the evacuation routes from your school, workplace, or any other place you could be where tsunami poses a risk. Keep your emergency preparedness kit ready beforehand. If you hear an official tsunami warning, gather your friends and family and evacuate at once. Never ever go to the shore to witness the tsunami. It's the most life-threatening thing you could do. Get to a higher ground as far inland as possible. Stay tuned to a battery-operated radio for updates about the situation. Return to your homes only after local officials tell you it is safe. A tsunami is a series of waves that may continue for hours. Do not assume that the danger is over after one wave. The next wave may be even larger than the first one. During the return, please be cautious at all times. Don't enter damaged houses without a flashlight and watch out for electrical short circuits and live wires. Stay out of any building that has water around it. Tsunami water can cause floors to crack or walls to collapse. Check yourself for injuries and try to get the first aid if needed. Always help people who require special assistance like infants or senior citizens. With these essential steps, you can brave tsunamis of any size, no matter when they strike. All it takes is to be prepared.
Next, natural disaster, fire. According to the Fire Code of the Philippines, fire is the active principle of burning characterized by the heat and light of combustion. Fire can cause major disaster, loss of lives in buildings such as offices, hotels, hospitals, schools, and homes. Such disaster can be avoided if the proper fire safety practices are observed. What to do in case in fire? Let's watch this.
That fire moves very fast. That's why it's important to know what to do if there's a fire in your home. You and your family should talk about how to get everyone out of your home quickly and safely. Make a plan and practice it at least twice a year. A plan will make sure that you all know what to do when you hear the smoke alarm sound. Work together to decide how to get out of every room in your home quickly and safely. Then practice your plan to be sure everyone understands it. Everyone who lives in or visits your home should know 2 ways out of every room. One way would be the door. The second way out might be the window. The plan should include where to meet outside after everyone has gotten out. Everyone needs to know where your meeting place is. Remember that the sound of 3 beeps and a pause over and over means there is smoke in your home. Everyone should follow the fire escape plan to get out. Some family members or guests might need help getting out. Infants and children will need help to wake up and get to safety. Be sure to plan for this and know who will wake them. Older children should know the plan and practice getting out on their own. Older family members or those with disabilities may also need assistance to get out. Make a plan for helping them too. Practice closing all the doors behind you as you leave. A closed door will help prevent the spread of the fire. Once everyone is outside the home and at your meeting place, call 911 for help. Never go back into a burning building. Once you are out, stay out. Practice your plan with a fire drill at least 2 times a year, in both the daytime and nighttime.
Next natural disaster, landslide. The NDDRMC OCD Disaster Preparedness Guidebook of Project DINA defines a landslide as the movement of soil, rocks, mud, or debris down a slope. A landslide can be caused by continuous heavy rains or rains-induced landslides or shaking due to earthquake or the earthquake-induced landslides. Here are the safety tips before, during, and after landslide. Let's watch this. Next natural disaster, the volcanic eruption. A volcano can be defined as the rupture or an opening on the crust of the planet like Earth. This opening allows hot ash, molten rocks, and gases to blow off from the underground spaces. Volcanoes generally acquire shape of a mountain. Volcanoes are usually found at places where tectonic plates get converged or diverged. If a volcano erupts where you live, follow the evacuation order issued by authorities and evacuation immediately from the volcano area to avoid flying debris, hot gases, lateral blast, and lava flow. The common feature of volcanic eruptions are lava and release of poisonous gases from the crater situated at the summit of volcano. What to do before, during, and after volcanic eruption? Let's watch this.
A volcanic eruption. Kung kayo ay nakatira sa isang probinsya na may active volcano kagaya ng Batangas o kaya ay Bicol, dapat alam natin kung tayo ay pasok sa danger zone ng bulkan. Ito ay ang 14 km radius mula sa bibig ng bulkan. Pasok man o hindi, mahalaga ang pagkakaroon ng go bag na may maiinom na tubig, pagkain na hindi basta nasisira, mga damit, at iba pang essentials kung sakaling tayo ay lilikas at hindi agad makahihingi ng tulong mula sa mga otoridad. Kasama na ang pagkakaroon ng mask kung tayo ay nakatira malapit sa bulkan. Alamin ang evacuation plan ng inyong barangay at bayan, kagaya halimbawa ng mga bayan ng Agoncillo, San Nicolas at Talisay na pasok sa danger zone. Ang kanilang mga evacuation areas ay sa mga karatig bayan. Sakaling mangyari ang isang volcanic eruption, dapat alam natin kung saan tayo pupunta. Lalo't higit kung wala tayong sariling sasakyan, dapat ay may pakikipag-usap na tayo sa mga kamag-anak, kaibigan o mga namamahala sa barangay kung saan maaaring sumabay sakaling dumating ang sakuna. Bilang mga residente na malapit sa lugar ng isang bulkan, dapat alam natin ang mga alert level ng volcanic eruption. Dapat alam din natin ang history ng bulkan, kung kailan ito huling pumutok at kung kailan maaaring maulit. During a volcanic eruption, walang ibang gagawin kundi lumikas papalayo sa bulkan. Ang ibinubuga nito ay siguradong makasasama sa ating katawan. Kung sakaling abutan ng ash fall sa ating mga tahanan, narito ang inyong maaaring gawin. Isarado ang mga pinto at bintana at takpan ito ng basang tela. Siguraduhin takpang maigi ang mga pagkain at tubig. may masamang maidudulot sa katawan ang ashfall, lalo na kung ito ay ating ma-ingest. Manatili sa loob ng tahanan, gumamit ng eye goggles at mask kahit nasa loob ng bahay. Kung walang available na mask, maaaring gumamit ng basang tela gaya ng panyo at lagi itong itakip sa bibig at ilong. After a volcanic eruption, huwag basta bumalik sa mga tahanan kung walang abiso ng otoridad. Kung maaari ay magpatingin sa doktor, lalo na kung kayo ay nakalanghap ng husto ng ashfall. Kung may mga paglindol, ipacheck ang inyong mga tahanan kung ito ay ligtas pang tirhan. Kung maglilinis ng ashfall, huwag itong basain at lalong huwag i-drain sa inyong kanal. Walisin lamang ito at ipunin sa isang sako.
Let's move on to the next natural disaster, the typhoon. The Philippines' geographical location and physical environments make it vulnerable to the natural hazard such as tropical cyclones, floods, extreme rainfall, thunderstorm, storm surge, strong winds, tornado, and others. Every year, this hazard bringing havoc to life and property seriously disrupt our agriculture-based economy and disturb the lives of millions of Filipino families. A typhoon is a type of tropical cyclone which is a general type of the circulating weather system over tropical waters. The most dangerous area is the eye wall. At 50,000 feet, the air is moved outward and that increases the upward motion. Typhoon force wind can topple poorly constructed buildings and mobile homes. The Philippine Storm Warning Signal number 1, wind speed 30 to 60 km per hour, time occurrence at least 36 hours. Signal number 2, wind speed 60 to 100 km per hour at least 24 hours. The signal number 3, 100 to 185 km per hour at least 18 hours. The signal number 4, greater than 185 km at least 12 hours. Here are the tips to follow before, during, and after typhoon. Let's watch this.
Put together a go bag in case you need to evacuate. Ensure you have enough supplies in case you lose power and water for several days and you are not able to leave due to flooding or blocked roads. Make a family emergency communication plan. Designate a spot where all of you can meet in case of an emergency. Always charge your cell phone so you will have a full battery in case you lose electricity. Turn your refrigerator or freezer to the coldest setting and open only when necessary. If you lose power, food will last longer. Make sure to close storm shutters and stay away from windows. Flying glass from broken windows could injure you. Monitor the media to get the latest weather updates and emergency instructions. Avoid walking or driving through floodwaters that may knock you down or sweep your vehicle away. The water may also be electrically charged or may be hiding dangerous debris. Know your evacuation route. A map can be handy. Make a family emergency plan and know the numbers you should contact for emergencies.
Let's move on to vulnerability. Vulnerability is a measure of the extent to which a community, structure, service, or geographical area is likely to be damaged or disrupted on account of its nature or location by the impact of the particular disaster hazard. It is present in the community or society even before a disaster happens. It precedes disaster, contribute to its severity impede disaster response, and may continue to exist long after a disaster has struck. The so-called most vulnerable sectors are the community members whose capacity are low and not sufficient of withstand and overcome the damaging and adverse effects of disaster. They are composed of farmers, urban poor, laborers, indigenous people, persons with disabilities or PWDs, women, and children. The so-called less vulnerable sectors are the community members whose capacities start from their own ability to acquire material resources, skills, and training, and position in society. They are composed of professionals, small entrepreneurs, and others similar to those who belong to the higher levels of society. Their role in disaster management activity is to extend assistance and support the vulnerable sectors. The so-called not vulnerable sector in the society having high position in the community. Most of the time, they are the targets of vulnerable and less vulnerable sectors. In advocacy work in relating disaster issue to structure and policies implemented by the government that are the root causes of vulnerability of the community. Four types of vulnerability. So let's discuss first the physical vulnerability. May be defined as the population density, remoteness of settlement, the site, design, material used for critical infrastructure for housing. As you can see, when we say physical vulnerability, mas nagfo-focus siya sa physical aspect ng isang setting. Nandiyan na yung kung gaano kadami ang population sa isang lugar, yung remoteness of settlement, kung saan ba gawa yung mga bahay o yung mga infrastructure. So, importante yan. It will actually help us determine the physical vulnerability. So, we have an example here. Wooden homes are less likely to collapse in the earthquake but are more vulnerable in fire. Ang ibig sabihin nito na yung mga bahay na gawa sa kahoy, mas hindi sila naaapektuhan ng earthquake compare sa concrete houses. Pero mas madali naman silang maapektuhan when it comes to fire. Mas madaling masunog ang bahay nila kung may indoor fire o unexpected fire. Let's move on to the social vulnerability. Refers to inability of people, organization, and society to withstand adverse impacts to hazard due to characteristics inherent in social interactions, instructions, and system of cultural values linked to the level of well-being of individuals, communities, and society. Levels of literacy and education, the existence of peace and security, access to basic human rights, system of good governance, social equity, positive traditional values, custom and ideological beliefs, and overall collective organizational system. So it means the different sectors of the society are actually included in determining the social vulnerability. So we have an example. When flooding occurs, some citizens, such as children, elderly, and differently able, or the persons with disabilities or PWDs may be unable to protect themselves or evacuate if necessary. So, ang ibig sabihin nito na the children and the senior citizen, they are more vulnerable to different hazard and disaster. Why? Because the children, they don't have enough knowledge on how to deal with this different disaster. Yung mga kaalaman nila, hindi pa ganoon kalawak. So, they lack knowledge. And then, sa mga senior citizen naman, yung mga tinatawag nating elderly, though they have the knowledge to deal with this different disaster, ang kulang naman sa kanila ay yung skills. Medyo nahihirapan na sila when it comes to movement. Kahit alam nila kung ano ang gagawin, because of their condition, nahihirapan na silang gumalaw, mas nagiging vulnerable sila pagdating sa disaster. And lastly, yung mga PWDs natin, so they cannot protect themselves. Kung kinakailangan ng mag-evacuate, mas mahihirapan sila. Why? Because they are still dependent on their significant others. So, educated and well-informed are more likely to survive when disaster strikes. There will be lesser casualty in communities with the emergency plans backed up by emergency personnel as compared to those without. So, importante talaga na sa isang community, they already know what to do. They have emergency plans. So that kahit anumang disaster ang dumating sa community, they will guided already as well as the people in the community. Next, economic vulnerability refers to the level of vulnerability is highly dependent upon the economic status of individuals, communities, and nations. The poor are usually more vulnerable to disaster because they lack the resources to build sturdy structures and put other engineering measures in place to protect themselves from being negatively impacted by disaster. The same people are the less prepared due to lack of access to education and information. So when it comes to economic vulnerability, maapektuhan ng mga disaster yung mga nasa poor section in aquatic society. Why? Because they are not well educated, they are not well informed, lalo na kung hindi sila nakapag-aral. So sila yung mas naapektuhan kung may disaster. So example, poorer families may live in squatter settlements because they cannot afford to live in safer, more expensive areas. So, lalo na sa Manila, ang kapital ng ating bansa, marami doong squatter settlements. Yung mga bahay nila dikit-dikit, tapos sa mga materials na ginagamit ay hindi ganoon ka-safe din. So kung magkakaroon tayo ng disaster, yung mas naapektuhan, sila yung mas naapektuhan. For example, kung magkaroon ng sunog, isa yun sa mga news na naririnig natin o napapanood natin sa TV. Kapag nagkakaroon lang ng leak ng LPG sa isang bahay, naapektuhan na yung lahat ng community. Mabilis kumalat yung apoy kasi nga sa structure ng kanilang bahay at they cannot afford to actually buy more expensive materials or safer materials. So let's move on to the last type of vulnerability, which is the environmental vulnerability. Natural resource depletion and resource degradation are key aspects of environmental vulnerability. This is one aspect that both communities and government must be sensitive about. For example, one measure or one mitigation na nakikita natin right now na ginagawa is yung tinatawag natin na reforestation and the natural resource protection and conservation. So, kailangan talaga ito to reduce the natural disaster risk and vulnerability. So, isa sa mga magandang gawin or one of the ways that we need to do actually not prevent but mitigate, lessen the effect of the disaster is through reforestation. So we have an example here. Wetlands such as Caroni Swamp are sensitive to increasing salinity from the seawater and population from the stormwater runoff containing agricultural chemicals, eroded soils, etc. Deforestation of mountains due to illegal logging is the main cause of landslide and mud flows like what happened in Ormoc Leyte in 1994 and Infanta Quezon in 2011. So those are actually the 4 types of vulnerability. This is Loving Ibanez reporting.